Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Lucille Usher Freeman. I am an author and a member of the Speakers Publishing Authors Association under Dr. Mike Wilkins. And today I have the honor of interviewing our guest, which is James Collins, who's known as Jay Collins. And he's the author of a book called The Spirituals. Jay, welcome today. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Jay, first of all, I'd like for you to tell our listeners something about yourself. Just in general, what do you do? What do you enjoy do? What are your hobbies? And talk about Jay.
All right, I'll talk about myself just for a little bit. I'm a published author a few times now, a singer, a songwriter, an arranger. I'm an avid skydiver. I plan to be certified hopefully this year, but we'll see how that goes. And I'm an avid bowler as well, although pandemic has made that a little more difficult. Thrill seeker. I love roller coasters and bungee jumping, hang gliding, you name it. And that started from a fear of heights. It's how I started skydiving and doing all that right. Other than that, I'm a family guy. I am also a youth minister of the Children's Church of my church, which I have done for the last 16 or 17 or so years. And professionally, or let me rephrase that, what pays the bills? I am an administrative coordinator at a hospital here in the city. And before that, I was an office manager, office administrator for a well-known criminal defense law firm, did that for 22 years. So,
wow,
you know, don't let this boyish good looks fool you. I'm not a spring chick, you know.
Well, Jay, I've learned something about you. I didn't know about all the skydiving and this and that. I know you were a thrill seeker. You know, well, you got a bravery bone somewhere in you. But, you know, there have been two women that you talked about who have shaped you. Could you tell us who they are? Two women in your life.
I always say the two most important women in my life are my mom, Marilyn, and my sister, Mary. I always say my sister, Mary, I think is the smartest person I've ever met. And she has such a graceful, quiet energy, but I can't even tell you how much admiration I have for my sister Mary. I'll give you a perfect example. She was going to buy a car. And so we were walking through the rows of the cars and I said, okay, make sure you find one that's got leather seats and a sunroof. And she said, why? I don't like leather seats. And I stopped and turned. I said, you know what? That's what I like. You're absolutely right. But just a perfect example. My sister, she's so quick. And then my mom, who sacrificed like everything for my sister and I. I almost can't even talk about it, Lucille, because I started getting emotional. But
that's okay.
Mom taught me everything. I remember I was on the phone with my friends at like 12. And one of them was talking about birth control. I think it's called an IUD or I think it's IUD. UID, whatever it is, but I'd never heard of it. And so I said, when my mom is here, I'll ask her. And he was like, you can't ask your mom that. I said, who can? I said, we want to know. So I asked my mom and she told me all about it. My friends were on the phone listening and she said, yeah, your Aunt Louise had one and she ended up getting an infection, had to have surgery to get it taken out. So they could not believe how open and honest my mom was, and she still is. And so that's why I credit her with the man I am today.
Well, good. Thank you, Jay. I want to know, and you talked about your family. I want to know about Jay, the writer.
Jay, okay.
Jay, the writer.
When my sister and I were coming up, my parents required us to read. Okay. So this was during the time we would get Ebony and Jet delivered to the house Jet came every week, Ebony was every month. So every week we had to pull stories from Jet magazine and give a report. We didn't have to write, but we'd have to give an oral presentation. Because my dad got hip to us and was like, you can't just give us a story based off the pictures, what you read from the pictures. So we
Okay.
had to go through, and because of that, just that I developed a love for reading. And so how writing came about when I was in high school, I went to a predominantly white high school, and
Mm-hmm.
they needed someone of color on
Mm-hmm.
these different social groups. So the school newspaper was something I was interested in doing. And it was so prejudiced at the time, Miss Lucille, they wouldn't invite me on as a writer, but they called me a contributing writer. Like I could submit stuff and they may or
Okay.
may. And then my short stories, I would submit short stories. And so it got popular until they kind of had to ask me to join the team
Okay.
for the school news. But that didn't happen until my junior year. I'd been writing since freshman, sophomore, and the middle of my junior year is when they finally asked me. And then I quit my senior year because I had written a story about racial injustice. I had
Mm-hmm.
one of the dances. They had a pretty baby contest at the Valentine's Day dance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost a riot because they didn't choose any of the Black kids
Okay.
for the top babies. And so I
Mm-hmm.
wrote about that and they cut my article.
She's
So
oh,
I
okay.
quit. You're right. They said,
That
well,
silence your voice, huh?
right. So I just quit the paper. So you know what? This is my senior year. I don't have to be bothered. I'm leaving here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's where my love of writing started. And I had my English teacher, my senior year, got us really involved in literature. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I developed a love for the greats, especially Shakespeare. My favorite book of all time is Macbeth by Shakespeare. And
Wow.
I know, and I was, because I was raised in the church with the
Okay.
King James Version of the Bible, reading that Shakespearean language, I caught it so quick, and nobody can understand how I can understand. But I told them, I would tell my classmates, just look at it like it's poetry. Like you're trying to holler at a girl and you're using these fancy words. So that's all it really is. And
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you how that teacher influenced me. I was working, I had a after school job. And I was working all these hours trying to pay graduation fees or whatever, and took the final and failed and still got an A in the class.
Oh, wow.
She
You
sat me
were
down
that
and
good, Jay, huh?
she just asked me a couple questions. She said, the only people that really do the work and participate in class are you, talking about me, and this other girl. She said, so you choked on the final, you still get an A.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, so impressive. Now, you said Macbeth is your favorite book.
favorite.
I had a little trouble reading some of Shakespeare's works. So let me just bring you on for some of us who were not as intellectually inspired. Tell us some of your other favorite books, maybe the other two,
Okay,
three.
I've got a top four. So
Okay.
there's a book called Embraced by the Light by Betty Jean Eating, where
Okay.
she has a near-death experience. I think I've purchased maybe 60 or 70 copies and given to people. That's how much I love that book.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the other book would be, I'm going blank, Lucille, just because you asked me, The Wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. Florence Scovel Shinn was a metaphysician from the early 20th century. She passed away, I think, in the early 1930s. But her writings on just using spiritual law and how the powers within you, I just love her practical approach. And then
Mm-hmm.
finally, I didn't read this book until my freshman year at Illinois State. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by
Oh,
Maya
Maya
Angelou.
Angelou.
And I heard Oprah Winfrey mention the book when she received an award for the NAACP. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know, well, why does the caged bird sing? So
Okay.
I went and bought it so I could find out. And I remember being on the bus going to College Hills Mall at Illinois State University and laughing out loud reading that book. And I said, these people are going to think I'm crazy. And I
Mm-hmm.
recognized then the power of written words because it had touched me. I laughed, uncontrollably. So,
That's a good book that can take you on a journey
oh
that
yes,
you could sit in your chair and, hey, time travel to the past, to the future,
future.
or to another country, or meet people you've never met because someone picked up a pen and used it as a tool. They could use it as a weapon.
Yeah.
But that's very important. Now, speaking of picking up the pen, I'd like for you to talk about the spirituals with, I think the last name was Jean, St. Jean,
It's actually
Cleveland.
John, the St. John.
St. John. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I blew that one, but that's okay. Could you talk about the spirituals with Cleveland?
Yes, that's right.
John.
You naming them. So I will be honest, Miss Lucille, I don't know where I got the entire concept from. I really don't. The idea popped in my head, and I wrote the first 2 chapters, and that was it. And I actually went back as I started writing the book. I had to stop and go back to the beginning and write things down, because like at first, there are a set of 4 siblings, and 2 of them are twins. And so when I first started out, I had a boy and a girl as for the twins. But then as I started writing, it's like the story guided me somewhere else, and I had to go back and change the twins so that they were both, young men. But I always say, I think in this case especially, I was an instrument, and the book just came through me. I don't know if it was from me, but it came through me.
Well, this family had a prophetic gift. They could sort of see in the future. And he keeps talking about 207. Something's going to happen at 207. And in the family, obviously hadn't shared I'm not going to give your book away, Jay.
That's all right.
But the family had not shared the secret that they had, like a gift of revelation or seeing in the future. And he's calling the police, and they're saying, when is this going to take place? We're going to leave it alone. They're going to have to get the book to find out what's going to take place. But the whole point is, do your family have a prophetic gift, or they could sort of see in the future? Just break it down, Jay. We want to know.
Okay, so it's funny you say that, because the main character in the story, which is Cleveland, is sort of based off me.
Oh.
And so, yeah. Even as a child, I would say things and people would be like, how does he know that?
Okay.
And so I was just kind of known for knowing things and for saying things. And, I remember one time I was on the phone with my friends and I had fallen asleep, and I jumped up, and they're like, well, you finally woke up to finish talking? And I said, I said, I see a bunch of broken glass, and move your bed away from the window. And it wasn't 2 weeks later, there was a shootout in the alley, and it went through the glass, which is where my friend's bed was. And she moved it, but she said when she came home late that night, she was working, glass was everywhere, right where her bed was before she moved it. So just little stuff like that would happen. So that's kind of where I based that off of. And my church is what you call a spiritual church. It's really non-denominational, but we're known as being spiritual. And those 4 principles are the foundations of our ministry. They call it the 4 square ministry: preaching, teaching, healing, prophecy. So I based that part off of our church's foundation, kind of playing and poking at different things there. So,
well, I want to know, do you still have the prophetic gift? I know you talked about it as a kid, but I just want to know.
I do.
Good.
When I was kind of what I call in my broke days back in undergrad, I actually got a job working for Sabrina Kincaid's Psychic Connection.
Okay.
And I thought it was a farce. I was like, because what if somebody calls and I have nothing to say? But lo and behold, I never will forget, a bill collector called me, Miss Lucille. And I said, look, I don't have the money. I said, I just got a job working for, and I told her, the psychics. And she started laughing. She said that you didn't have to make nothing up like that. And I was like, no, I'm telling you the truth. And so she said, well, tell me something then. And I said, well, it doesn't work like it. Before I could get it doesn't work like that out, I started telling her about her daughter and what she was going through. And the lady was in tears. Do you know she wiped that credit card debt off? They never called me again. It was never on my credit anymore.
That's very interesting, Jay. Something I did not know about you.
I'm telling too much now.
Tell me about your writing process, Jay.
So I'm a slow starter.
Okay.
And so with the spirituals, Dr. Mike, and I don't let me forget to tell you the whole thing with Dr. Mike, but he was on my case and threatened me to get it done. But it was slow for me to start. So what I did was I said, well, let me come up with an outline of where I think I want to go. And that way, maybe that'll help me to piece it together. So I wrote an outline. I scratched that because what was coming to me didn't match. So I said, well, I'll just put pen to paper, which I was typing really. And I just started typing. And what came to me was like chapters 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
When I got to 7, I was blank. But I had an idea. The sister, I want to, since she's the only girl, I want to do something special with her. So I started writing her chapter. I said, now I don't know where I'm going to put it in, but I'll write what I have for her and then see if I can go back to where I left off. And that's just what happened. But I became obsessed, which is how those chapters made it to the collaboration, because I couldn't concentrate. Once I got started, I couldn't really do anything else but that. And then it just consumed me almost 24/7. That's all, everything. I was doing research because I make mention of Hostess that makes the Twinkie and all that. So I had to do research because I wanted things to match up. So if somebody read it, they would say, or question at least, did this really happen? So I like the different cities that I mentioned. I had to do research to make sure that I was giving accurate information about these cities. You know, I didn't know they had twin bridges in Baton Rouge. I've never been there before. But I did some research to kind of pull out some things, in my description. So that was my process.
Thank you. But we're going to get a book 2.
Book 2 is, I'm in the middle. It's called Sacred Secrets. And again, it's been a slow start, but once I finally got it going, then it started flowing. But I rewrote the first chapter 4 times.
Okay.
Scrapped the first version, scrapped the second version. And just last week, I said, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. And I was finally able to get it out. So I still don't know where it's going. I just let it flow.
But at least it's going. At least it's going. You know, the story you told me about being on the phone and the lady wiping out because you used your gift and she wiped out your bill. That's a good story to use in the book, in your book, so where do you get the ideas for your stories? But that would be a good one.
Thank you. And I didn't even think about that, but now I appreciate that. You know, I don't know. I just say my mind is very creative. And I think that's because as a child, I had a very tumultuous relationship with my dad, who abused drugs heavily, and there was a lot going on. And I think that's why I appreciated reading, because it was an escape. I could go to Africa or to Paris, which was my dream, through reading. And so now that I have the opportunity, I just feel like, okay, I'm a host. Let me take you on this journey. And so like the piece I wrote, I don't know if you read, for the collaboration. And I remember when Dr. Mike called me, he was like, dude, where did you get that from? And so what I did is called Those Same Blue Eyes. And I knew when I wrote it, I wanted to start off writing where you think the main character is in love with this man with these eyes. But as the story unfolds, you see that it's a traumatic situation.
He's a police officer. He's down.
Right. That's exactly it.
I enjoy your writing. Thank you.
Thank you. But that part, I always kind of want to blindside you. I want you to think it's one thing and then discover later it's something else. That I take joy in. So,
okay.
I don't know where these things come from, Miss Lucille. I really don't. I wish I could say I had a formula, but it just kind of comes to me and I just go with it.
I hope you're keeping journals. What would you tell someone who's not as advanced? I'll let you answer about the journal, but what would you tell someone who's not as advanced as you, the new writer, someone that says, I think I want to write, but I don't have the courage. I don't have the confidence. What would you tell them, Jay?
Two things. First, Nike slogan, just do it. And the reason I say just do it, if you just trust that God has put into you what you need, then you can just do it. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to know where you're going, where it's leading you. Take pen to paper, fingers to the keyboard, and just do it. And then step back and see what you have. That's all. And I know
Jay,
as a witness, I have stood in my own way many a time. So I can tell you from experience.
Well, tell us about SPAA. Most people, I look at you because when I first met you, Jay, you were on the stage, and Jay is very bold on the stage. He owns the stage. He embraces the stage. And a lot of people go from the page to the stage, but you went just the opposite, in my mind, from the stage to the page instead of page to the stage. So because you're very bold about standing in front of people. So tell us, how was your journey? How did SPAA inspire you? I know you're our director of the theater, and you're a great actor, and you get up there and sing. You're very bold on the stage. Tell us how SPAA has brought the writing part of Jay out.
Thank you for those nice things, Lucille. I appreciate that. And it's so hard for people to believe I'm actually very shy. I know I get on stage and just,
you own it.
And I don't really know where that comes from, to be
you own it.
honest. But I have grown, because as a child, I was painfully shy. Like, they'd call for me to sing on the different programs, and I would go and hide. I would be so scared and things. But what happened was I had vocal issues. And so I met with the surgeon for the surgery to correct these sinus issues going on with my voice. And it just didn't go well. And so I said, well, what I'll do is I'll transition out of the theater side and go to the speakers and publishers side. I had no intention of writing a book. You were given the lecture for the writing contest, and you had everybody to stand up and say, what would your book be about? I just started talking on the top of my head and said, well, I'd probably like to write a trilogy and blah, 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 blah. And so then the contest was on us, and I had to write something. I said, well, okay. So I just wrote something. And I remember Tammy called me. She was like, oh my God, Jay. And I was like, wow, you think it's good? And she's like, yeah, but Dr. Mike never said anything. So the weeks had gone by, and I said, well, it really wasn't all that, because if it was, Dr. Mike would have said something. And one of those SPAA meetings, he pulled me aside. And he was like, I can hear him now. He said, I hate to tell you this. He said, because I don't want your head to get big. He said, but I see a lot of writers. He said, and you really have a gift. And I was like, I said, thank you. And that's when he threatened me to finish the book. And once I finished it, he says, I'm going to award you our scholarship this year in honor of my brother, which is Sergeant Major Hartman Wilkins. And that covered the cost of the expense to publish my first book. And, you know, Lucille, I couldn't even talk about it for the longest time because I was burst out in tears. I'm a typical Cancer. It don't take much. I'm sensitive, but I'm so appreciative of Dr. Mike and him making my dreams come true. As a little kid, me reading all these materials, I dreamed of writing a book. I just never thought it would happen now. And so he made that possible for me. And then I couldn't find a place for the book release, you know, to throw a big shindig for that. And I remember telling Tammy, I said, what if I just did something virtually online? And so Tammy was like, that sounds nice, but you know, you should find some place. So the pandemic hit a couple months after that. And I went ahead with my virtual book release, very successful. My first and second week release on Amazon, because of that, I was in the top 20 of my category. I think my peak point was like number 18, which who knew? And Amazon sent me a little letter and everything, but I'm so grateful for SPAA and Dr. Mike. I say it all the time. People think I'm kidding. SPAA saved my life because I was freshly divorced, and I couldn't blame, you know, me not fulfilling my dreams on my ex-wife, because, you know, she's my ex-wife now. And I just made the commitment do what I want to do what I've dreamed of doing, because time is drawing nigh. You know, what if I don't get the opportunity anymore? And I'm not talking about death, but plenty of people experience things in life. They lose their mind, they lose their limbs or whatever, and they don't have that opportunity. And I asked myself, have I made the most out of every opportunity? And the answer was like, no, I've made excuses. I haven't made the most. So I started going forward. And so now when I sing and perform, like you say, you know, you're so bold. I know people are watching them like, are you kidding? Because I would stand in one spot with my eyes closed and sing, and then put the mic back and go. I wouldn't move. I wouldn't do anything. But now.
You've grown then. Because Jay, you would walk
yes.
all out in the theater. You would walk out to the audience and you would interact. You were very, very bold. Just like when you jump out of that, you skydiving and you're going to get a certificate. Hey, that doesn't sound like not being bold or shy to me, you know, or not using your life, you know, but what can I say? What can I say? But so I don't know if people are you seem so far, so advanced now. I know two people that haven't started. You just said start. That's what you're saying to someone looking at the podcast and saying, hey, I don't do all that. You know, how do I get started? What should I do? I'm not as bold as Jay.
No, you don't have to be like anybody but yourself. If you have an idea, and Lucille, you mentioned something a moment ago, which I'm terrible at, but pray for me, I'm working on it. And that's journaling. But even if, and I think where I get journaling mixed up, and I'm saying this to help somebody else, I don't think you have to write every day, but every time you get a thought or something impresses you, I think that's the time to pick up a book and just write it down. You read something that touched you, write down how you're feeling right at that moment. And then I think you find you keep doing that on a consistent basis, you'll have something to go off of for your writing. You know, if all you know is, I want to write about the state of Texas. I love Texas. Okay, well, pick up a book and write, I love Texas. What do you love about Texas? I love the country. I love, you know, the fresh air. I love that it's on the water. If you're in the South Texas, you know, you can start slow. Like you said before, a slow start is still a start though. True. And you can build off that. But as long as you're doing something other than dreaming or just talking about it, nothing wrong with being a dreamer, but you have to take those dreams and put some action behind it.
I agree, Jay. Well, I told you earlier, one of my words for myself is courage, because courage to, like you said, get started, courage to keep going, courage to take advantage of opportunities. What would one of your words be, Jay? If one you use one word to describe yourself, what would it be?
One word. I know what I want to say, but it's not one word.
Okay.
Oh, how about if I use this then? Fearless. I heard a preacher say, don't allow fear, F-E-A-R, to interfere with what life has for you.
Great.
So that's why I say just fearless. If it doesn't work out, it just don't work out. You know, you can try something else, try whatever it is a different way, but at least you have put forth the effort. You know?
Jay, I have to say this. I heard something earlier that you shared. You said two things about Maya Angelou. I know why the cage bird sings, and that's her personal story about going through abuse and getting her voice back. She said when she wrote that story, she cried. And the rule is no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. You got to let it out on the page, okay? You cry with your pen sometimes. So my question for you, Jay, you mentioned dealing with a dad who was addicted. Have you thought about writing that story?
I have. It's funny you mentioned that, because when I was younger, I wrote a song about like our relationship. And I went to the studio to record the song, and I was a hot mess. I boo-hooed walking into the booth to even sing. We never did get it finished because I was too emotional. So I'm considering, that's all I'll say. I'm considering. But I did a few years back, I preached at church for a youth day, and I discussed for the first time openly about my dad and our relationship. And I'm not going to say it caused problems, but like my mom didn't know some things that I revealed, and my grandmother. And they was, well, why didn't you tell me? And I said, I had to explain to him, I don't want you to feel guilty. It wasn't for you to know. I said, and I didn't share these things for you to pick up a burden of guilt. I said, I'm trying to help somebody else and how, what I went through and how I made it over. And so, so I'm considering all these things as, yeah, I'll just say that.
Okay. I'm going to tell you what a lot of writers do, including me. I'm writing a story and you use a pen name or pseudonym. You don't have to use your name because you don't want to embarrass someone. So that's what some people do. They use a pen name. So that may be something you would consider. But I think your story would help someone else. A lot of children are dealing with something the same that you had to deal with. So that would help. But anyway, Jay, is there any where can people get your book? Or where can they find you, Jay?
They can find me, my website, www.jaycollinsbooks.net. That's JayCollinsbooks.net. My books are also on Amazon. I do have an author's page there as well. And if you enjoy my works, please won't you consider writing a review, even if you don't like it. Go ahead and write a review and tell me what it was that maybe you didn't care for. Also, you can find me as well as Miss Lucille, any of the authors on the SPAA website, www.spaatheater.org, SPAATheater.org. I know the speakers and publishers side has a website, but I'm not sure if it's operational. They're doing some work on it right now. But that's where you can find them. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm not doing Instagram, Lucille. It's like this social media is like a second job, man. But Jay Collins, Jay Collins on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to email me, it's james@jaycollinsbooks.net.
It's so much pleasure to have you on today, Jay. And thanks to SPAA. Thank you, SPAA and Pastor Mike, for giving us this opportunity. And I hope if you're out there and you want to write, that we will hear from you. And SPAA's website, or where can they contact SPAA again, Jay?
www.spaatheater.org.
Okay, thank you so much. And you have a great day and bye.
All right. Thank you, Miss Lucille.